in the news. A new jobs report is in. The Labor Department says the economy added 119,000 jobs in September. That exceeds economists' expectations of 50,000, according to FactSet. However, the pace of hiring remains modest. The unemployment rate rose to 4.4%, above the expected 4.3%. The release of the September jobs report was delayed by over a month due to the 43-day government shutdown, which furloughed staff at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Revisions to prior months show slower growth than initially reported. July's jobs gains were lowered by 7%, by 7,000, while August shifted from a 22,000 gain to a 4,000 loss. Combined employment in those 2 months was 33,000 jobs lower than first reported. Vice President J.D. Vance commented on the jobs report this morning while speaking to Breitbart Washington Bureau Chief Matt Boyle. Take a listen.
Huge jobs report, and I assume the market is going crazy right now. It probably just opened, because what this shows is that the Trump economic policies are actually working. And you've got 119,000 new jobs. Economists thought that we would have about 50,000 new jobs, but that's actually just the headline number. If you look below the surface, I think the numbers are actually better. The best thing that you can say about the Trump economy is that American jobs are going to American workers for a change, and that's the thing that I'm proudest about with these numbers.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics said yesterday it would not be publishing an employment report for October. It will combine non-farm payrolls for that month with November's report. That's because the recently ended government shutdown prevented the collection of data for the household survey. That means October's unemployment rate will never be known. November's employment report will be released in mid-December. That would be after the Federal Reserve's December policy meeting. And an update on the Jeffrey Epstein files. President Trump has signed into law a bill to release the documents surrounding the deceased sex offender. The Epstein Files Transparency Act orders the Department of Justice to release all unclassified records or documents tied to Epstein in a searchable and downloadable format. The release must come no later than 30 days following the bill's enactment. The measure prohibits the Justice Department from withholding or redacting records for political reasons or to protect someone's reputation. After signing the bill, Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "Jeffrey Epstein was a lifelong Democrat who donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians and was deeply associated with many well-known Democrat figures." Meanwhile, Harvard President Larry Summers is taking leave from the university and has resigned from the OpenAI board. This follows newly released emails showing he stayed in contact with Epstein years after Epstein's 2008 conviction. President Trump says he'll meet New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the White House tomorrow. The meeting comes after a contentious campaign in which Trump backed Mamdani's opponent, Andrew Cuomo, and criticized Mamdani's platform. Mamdani takes office on January 1st. He says his transition team reached out to the White House as part of a commitment he made during the campaign. At a press conference this morning, Mamdani said he views this meeting as an opportunity to speak on behalf of New Yorkers. He said he planned to discuss public safety and the city's economic challenges. Lawmakers are under the microscope for allowing a provision to sneak into the government funding bill that could enrich some senators for alleged DOJ misconduct. NTD's Melina Weiscup breaks down what this means.
Republican Senator Chuck Grassley uncovered last month that while former special counsel Jack Smith was investigating Republicans' response to the 2020 election, he allegedly secretly searched the phones of 10 Republican senators. Why this relates to the recently passed government funding bill? Well, senators, when they crafted this government funding bill, someone, we don't know who at this point, put in a provision that would allow senators to sue the government for $500,000 for allegedly improperly searching their phones. So after it was brought to light that this new provision would allow senators to profit from this on the backs of U.S. taxpayers, the House moved to overturn it. It was a unanimous vote in the House, many expressing outrage that they weren't made aware of this new piece when the Senate sent the bill back to them for their final approval. Now the Senate needs to take it up, but it's unclear if it will pass at this point. Senate Majority Leader John Thune previously defended the new provision, saying it will strengthen government accountability.
We strengthen that provision when it comes to allowing a federal government agency, the Justice Department in this case, to collect information, private information on individual senators. We think that's a violation of separation of powers under the Constitution. Obviously, Jack Smith violated the law in the way he went about that. This is something that needed to be addressed.
Many senators whose phones were allegedly secretly searched have said they would sue the government, but some have said they wouldn't take monetary damages, except for Senator Lindsey Graham.
Oh, it's far more than that. Why do you pick? You want to make sure that people who are going to issue subpoenas in the future against private citizens to get their phone records without a court order, without a warrant, have to think twice. And if the government doesn't pay, you're going to get more of this. So the only way you're going to prevent this in the future is for somebody to be held liable and the government pay.
With this revision out of the House and now laying on the desk of the Senate leader, we'll have to wait and see how Republican senators handle it. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Thanks, Melina, for that report. And a Florida congresswoman is facing federal charges over what prosecutors say was a $5 million scheme involving disaster relief funds. Democratic Representative Sheila Cherfilis McCormick and 3 others were indicted in Miami. She's accused of stealing FEMA overpayments sent to Trinity Healthcare Services in 2021 when she served as CEO there. The Justice Department says the funds were tied to a FEMA-backed COVID vaccination staffing contract and were never returned after the overpayment was flagged. Officials also accused the Congresswoman of routing money through friends and family to make straw donor contributions. Prosecutors allege the group laundered the money, moved it through multiple accounts, and used a substantial portion to support her special election campaign. Attorney General Pam Bondi called the misuse of disaster funds selfish. FBI Director Kash Patel reacted, saying no one is above the law. Cherfilis McCormick faces up to 53 years in prison if convicted. Her brother and 2 co-defendants also face significant penalties. Federal prosecutors have charged a Chicago man with committing a terrorist attack for allegedly setting a woman on fire on a Blue Line train. Investigators say 50-year-old Lawrence Reed on Monday night doused a woman with gasoline, chased her through the train, and then set her on fire. Authorities say the victim, a 26-year-old woman, remains hospitalized in critical condition with severe burns. Reed was arrested the next morning, and police said he made incriminating statements about the attack. The ATF special agent in charge said Reed has a long, violent criminal history and should not have been free at the time. Prosecutors say the federal charge carries a maximum penalty of life in prison, and if the victim dies, the case could be eligible for the death penalty. Meanwhile, Marines in North Carolina got a special visit yesterday. First Lady Melania Trump and Second Lady Usha Vance visited Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the trip of the pair who were showing their gratitude to troops and family members ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday.
Good afternoon, Camp Lejeune.
First Lady Melania Trump called military families the quiet strength of the nation.
Your love, patience, and courage give our service members the confidence to serve with honor and the comfort of knowing home is always waiting.
Yesterday's trip marks the first time the First and Second Lady traveled together without their husbands since the start of the administration. Trump thanked troops for standing watch so others can celebrate the upcoming Thanksgiving in peace.
This month and every month, America remains grateful for your service, your sacrifice, and your spirit.
Trump and Vance both offered belated birthday wishes to the Marine Corps at large, just over a week after it celebrated its 250th year in service on November 10th. Vice President J.D. Vance served in the Marine Corps before beginning his political career. Second Lady Usha Vance said she was especially excited to be relatively close to Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, also located in North Carolina, where her husband was once stationed during his time in uniform.
He's told me so many stories about his time in eastern North Carolina that this feels like home.
Vance says Marines embody boldness in action, unity in purpose, and a lightning readiness to go wherever the nation requires.
We are so grateful to you for carrying on the Marine Corps' proud traditions of duty, honor, and service.
Trump and Vance also visited a high school and elementary school. The pair prepared holiday care packages for troops deployed with the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. The unit deployed to the Caribbean Sea in August and is part of a growing military buildup around Latin America. The unit began joint military training this week with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Trinidad and Tobago is situated just a few miles off Venezuela's coastline. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thank you, Daniel. And the Trump administration plans to outline details of payments to farmers soon. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said the farm economy is really struggling right now, speaking on News Nation.
Part of that is because of the China refusing to buy soybeans during the trade renegotiations. Of course, that is now opened back up. When China, one country, buys about 65% of your soybean crop, you're sort of putting your own farmers at the, in a bad place if something were to happen.
Under the trade agreement, China committed to buying 12 million metric tons of soybeans from the United States before the end of 2025, and at least 25 million metric tons per year in the next 3 years. Rollins said the department will soon be announcing a potential bridge payment for those still facing losses. The National Farmers Union urged Trump last month to issue payments to struggling farmers. It said they were facing severe economic challenges and a deepening crisis if they did not receive immediate assistance. Still to come, Tesla reportedly wants its American-made cars to be built without any Chinese parts. We have expert commentary for you after this, as well as the CDC changing its website language and a major shift in its stance on the link between vaccines and autism. Find out what it now says after this. Welcome back. Tesla reportedly wants its American-made cars to be built without any Chinese parts. The Wall Street Journal, citing unnamed sources, says the electric car maker has already started the transition and aims to have it complete within the next year or two. Joining us for Insight is Kurt Hopkins, the CEO of MCQ Markets. Good to have you with us today, Kurt. Thanks for joining.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Sure. First, your reaction to this report.
Well, I think it's very interesting news that Tesla will be going all-American in their U.S. plants. I mean, it's not surprising, given I think that the trend is very much that way, that there's a lot of concern about Chinese-made componentry and sophisticated American manufactured products. We've seen this previously in the telecoms industry. Now we're seeing it in other industries that are critical. And so I just think it's a general macro trend. But what's particularly fascinating about Tesla is they're having this dual track strategy, because they obviously manufacture lots of cars in China. And so in China, they're going with a Chinese part maximization approach, and they're doing the same thing in the US, really, where they're trying to get rid of Chinese-made components in the U.S. manufacturing process as well. So it's very interesting to see how Tesla is going to be handling this big challenge.
Certainly. Do you expect prices to be impacted if Tesla does complete this mission that it's got?
Well, I would think in the U.S., certainly, one of the driving factors of this is tariffs. And so we also know that the U.S. Has struggled in the past couple decades to be competitive with Chinese products, given the U.S. cost base. So I suspect, it's quite possible that these components will become more expensive to manufacture in the U.S. and therefore drive up cost for Teslas. Yeah, so that very well could happen. But let's see, because the more volume you push through, and obviously these suppliers will not only be supplying Tesla, but they'll be supplying other EV car manufacturers in the U.S. as well. So it's quite possible that over time that those volumes will drive costs down.
And in that sense, what ripple effects, aside from the cost, if any, do you expect within the industry?
I think the big issue we have in the industry with the tariffs and the stated intent of the Trump administration to bring manufacturing jobs back home is how fast can that really occur? And we do know in the automotive industry, it's, tens of billions of dollars to rehome these factories, and that there's not the workforce also available, and that the U.S. is not necessarily a great place to manufacture cheaper cars, given the cost and sophistication of the U.S. labor force. So I think that one of the big challenges just generally is going to be how much capacity is there really in the U.S. to bring back. But I do think that Tesla is going to make a concerted effort here in the next 2 years to get this done.
And will their role here potentially lead the way and shaping other companies' actions on this front?
I mean, Tesla is unique because they have such a big manufacturing base in both China and the U.S. So they're trying to play both parties and be friends to both governments. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they handle this. They're obviously one of the more fleet of foot parties as well. So they're not like the older automotive manufacturers that tend to be slower and more turgid. So these guys can move faster. And we've seen it many, many times. So I think Tesla will lead the way, and I think the rest of the industry may very well follow, seeing if Tesla's being able to do this successfully or not.
Now, your company, MCQ Markets, helps people invest in collector cars. Could Tesla's supply changes make it harder or easier to get parts for rare or collectible cars in the future?
Well, I think with the collector cars, we're dealing with stuff that goes back, a few years, and so I don't think we'll see a dramatic impact. I mean, what we are seeing right now, in the higher end on the collector car is that prices are rising, they are going up, valuations are going up, simply because the limited editions are very, very popular, especially of like the Ferraris that sit behind me now, and as we're entering into this hybrid era of supercars and sports cars. We're starting to see the older cars have quite a bit of attraction to collectors, and therefore the valuations are going up.
So how much of a risk is China and the geopolitical tensions there with the U.S. for the auto industry?
I think it's very significant, and but what I would say is a possible greater disruption is with respect to the Canadian and the Mexican and American situation, with the agreement that used to be known as NAFTA. So that is where I think there could be potential greater disruption, simply because those supply chains are so integrated for the U.S. and making cars specifically for the U.S. But generally in EV, the tech stack, so the combination of all this really high-end technical equipment is super important. And this is an issue that the U.S. has, that the Chinese have really moved away and become a much more strong in the EV space. Their EV technology is much better than we see on the market in the U.S. And so the U.S. has catching up to do. So I think it's really important that this investment is made and the U.S. continues to invest in EVs to keep up and surpass the Chinese.
With that in mind, finally, any final remarks for lawmakers and for individual buyers out there looking to buy a car?
Well, it's very interesting seeing the disruption of tariffs to the industry. And so there may be opportunities for, buyers to pick up cars that are less valued than they were recently. So that's great. And of course, our big point always is, the collector car industry is amazing. It's, for the last 10 years, collector cars have returned 185%. And so we hope that continues. And obviously we're giving investors opportunity to buy a share in some of the most iconic cars out there. So we encourage everyone to come and check us out at mcqmarkets.com.
Certainly the numbers look promising, and those cars are stunning behind you. So thanks for giving us a little sneak peek there. Yeah. Okay. Kurt Hopkins, good to speak with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Attorneys for former FBI Director James Comey appeared before a federal judge in Virginia yesterday. They're seeking the dismissal of what they call a selective and vindictive prosecution by the Trump administration. NTD's Arlene Richards has that story.
Oh, and there's
a member of the first Trump administration has accused his former boss of holding a grudge, one so deep that it led to what his attorneys argue is a selective and vindictive prosecution. Attorneys for former FBI Director James Comey asked Virginia District Court Judge Michael Nachmanoff on Wednesday to dismiss the federal indictment filed against him in September.
Could you raise your right hand, please?
Comey's attorneys said the Trump administration was singling out his client because of the president's personal animus toward him. They also claim his testimony was protected speech. The Justice Department charged Comey with making false statements and obstructing a congressional proceeding during testimony he gave before a Senate committee in 2020. They're accusing him of authorizing leaks to the press about FBI investigations. A pressing issue Nachmanoff addressed during the hearing was the claim that the entire grand jury didn't see the full indictment. Comey's attorney had accused the government of altering the indictment after the jury declined to approve one count. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan was the only attorney that presented before the grand jury. She was in the courtroom on Wednesday, but a different attorney argued on behalf of the government. Nachmanoff questioned Halligan about what the full grand jury saw. She pushed back and directed the judge to the transcript of a back and forth between one juror and the magistrate judge. Comey's attorney asked Nachmanoff to dismiss the case with prejudice, meaning the case cannot be brought for a second time. Nachmanoff said the issues are too wavy and too complex. He said he would not be making a ruling on Wednesday. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Senator John Cornyn says ICE agents need to make arrests in public because so many so-called sanctuary cities are refusing to cooperate. And Senate Democrats walk out of a hearing about immigration enforcement before it gets started. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Many of us look to law enforcement officers for protection in cases of robbery, burglary, or assault. Why can't we extend the same level of respect to law enforcement officers who carry out our other laws that Congress has passed, like our immigration laws?
Americans have had enough. They're sick of masked agents disrespecting daycares, schools, and churches, disappearing loved ones, and intimidating our communities.
The barriers slowing down ICE from carrying out deportations, as well as critiques of ICE's actions, were on the table in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Chairman John Cornyn comments on why ICE needs to often go out into the streets to make arrests.
Because sanctuary cities simply refuse to cooperate with law enforcement and allow them to be transferred directly from jail if detained.
Ranking member Alex Padilla says during ICE raids, brutality and misuse of power are being seen regularly.
But my guess is that today you won't be hearing about the Department of Homeland Security's violent takedowns of peaceful, hardworking, long-term immigrants who don't have that violent criminal record.
After giving his opening statement, Padilla walked out of the hearing saying, quote, "This hearing will not be a serious or constructive conversation."
And for that reason, I refuse to give oxygen to the fire of disinformation and propaganda that this hearing was set up to ignite.
Padilla's exit was followed by the rest of the Democrat subcommittee members. One witness says that many illegal aliens in the country are forced by the cartels to commit crimes.
The cartels have a vast intelligence network and keep records of the people they smuggle. I've had illegal aliens involved in criminal activity tell me that they had no choice but to commit criminal acts in order to prevent their family members from being placed into bondage and doing unspeakable acts in their home countries.
Boyd says this has become a major national security concern.
What this means is that millions of illegal aliens now residing in the United States are part of the logistical support operations for illicit cartel activities throughout our country.
Another witness says that many of the large ICE protests around the country are being organized by well-funded activist groups. She spoke specifically about the June demonstrations in Los Angeles.
These certainly were not spontaneous riots. They were well coordinated. What we uncovered was an orchestrated operation, and those at the forefront of the anti-ICE resistance have received ample funding. Chief among them is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles.
Jason Blair, NTD News.
Thank you, Jason. A federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from ending protected status for more than 6,000 Syrians in the U.S. The Syrians are in the U.S. under the Temporary Protected Status Program. It allows foreign nationals to work in the U.S. if their country is in the midst of war or natural disaster. Syria's civil war ended last year. The Trump administration said Syria was a hotbed of terrorism and extremism, and that the U.S. has no way to vet Syrians coming to the U.S. since there's no U.S. diplomatic mission in Syria. The judge agreed with 7 Syrian migrants who sought to block the protection's removal, saying the abrupt removal was likely illegal. She said the government was not giving consideration to each migrant's case in this and other instances. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention update the language on their website related to the link between vaccines and autism. A page on the CDC website now says the claim vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim. It's an alteration of the previous language that stated only that vaccines do not cause autism. The new language also says that studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism, adding, quote, studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. The agency said a new investigation is underway. The page still maintains the language vaccines do not cause autism under an agreement between health officials and the chairman of the Senate Health Committee. The CDC website also says that the CDC and other U.S. health agencies pushed the earlier view that vaccines do not cause autism in order to prevent vaccine hesitancy. The Autism Science Foundation responded today, saying it's appalled by the recent updates on the CDC webpage, adding that the content is filled with, quote, anti-vaccine rhetoric. Next, storms moving slowly across the south could affect parts of Texas devastated by deadly flooding in July. More than 5 inches of rain could fall in some locations today, which is enough to trigger flooding. A level 3 out of 4 risk of flooding rainfall is in place for Texas Hill Country. The rest of central and northern Texas could see localized flooding, including Dallas-Fort Worth. After drying out Friday and Saturday, a second round of rain is expected to arrive in Texas after the weekend. Airport checkpoints could soon get stricter about passenger IDs. The Transportation Security Administration has proposed a new rule that would charge airline passengers an $18 fee if they arrive at airport security without a real ID or passport. Under the proposal, those travelers would have their identities verified through TSA's new biometric kiosk system before being allowed through the checkpoint. TSA says the $18 fee will help pay for the new technology. The agency says the publication of the new rule kicks off a public comment period. It's still unclear when the new system will be implemented. The Department of Homeland Security began enforcing real ID requirements for domestic flights in May after years of delays. TSA told ABC News that the fee is a next step in real ID compliance and is intended to maintain both security and efficiency at airport checkpoints. Meanwhile, shoppers will have extra time to return holiday gifts this year. Amazon will expand its return window to make buying online, it says, as seamless and worry-free as possible. For most items purchased through December 31st, returns will be accepted through January 31st next year. Products must be in original or unused condition. There are some exceptions. Some items, like Apple-branded products, can only be returned through January 15th. More and more Americans are turning to Walmart to ease the burden of higher prices. In its quarterly financial report today, the company said its business in the U.S. is surging and it's gaining market share from rivals. Last quarter, Walmart's domestic sales were up 4.5%. The retail giant saw an increase in customer trips to stores, and shoppers spent more during those visits. The company also raised its sales and profit guidance, indicating it expects a strong holiday shopping season. Walmart has used its massive size to drive down prices and invest billions into raising pay, sprucing up stores, and building an online shopping logistics network. Where you watch Major League Baseball is changing starting next season. The league has struck new 3-year media rights deals with ESPN, NBC Universal, and Netflix. NBC Universal takes over Sunday Night Baseball with games airing across NBC, Peacock, and its cable network NBCSN. NBC will also carry the postseason wildcard series. For fans who pay for MLB.TV to watch out-of-market games, that service will now be sold by ESPN, which also gets a new package of midweek games. Netflix is also stepping up to the plate, securing rights to the Home Run Derby, the season's exclusive opening night game, and the Field of Dreams game. The shuffle was prompted after ESPN opted out of the final years of its previous deal. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says Russia is in contact with the U.S., but denies reports of having drawn up a new peace plan. How the European Union is now weighing in. And Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te posted pictures of himself eating Japanese-sourced sushi, a way to show his support for Japan in a bitter diplomatic dispute with Communist China. After this. I'm Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. The Kremlin says Russia is in contact with the U.S., but denies reports of having drawn up a new peace plan. Axios first reported on a plan aimed at ending the war in Ukraine, which would include major concessions for Kyiv. The European Union's foreign policy chief also weighs in, saying any peace plan needs European support for it to work.
What we as Europeans have always supported is a long-lasting and just peace, and we welcome any efforts to achieve that. Of course, for any plan to work, it needs Ukrainians and Europeans on board, so this is very clear.
She added that discussions should start with a ceasefire at the front lines. This would enable negotiation to discuss Ukrainian territories occupied by Russia. The foreign policy added that the question of security guarantees also has to be resolved. The Kremlin says there are no consultations currently underway with the U.S. on ending the conflict in Ukraine. Moscow did confirm that Russia is in contact with the U.S., but added that the current process can't be called peace consultations. The Office of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says it did receive a draft of the U.S. plan to end the war. According to Kyiv, Zelensky is planning to discuss the key points of the plan with President Trump in the coming days. Meanwhile, dozens are injured after a train crash in Europe. An express train collided with another passenger train in southern Czech Republic today. The accident took place at around 6:20 a.m. local time. A total of 57 people suffered mostly light injuries, but at least 2 were seriously injured. Rail traffic along the line was halted and not expected to resume until this afternoon. Authorities were investigating the cause of the crash. And we're moving now to an ongoing volcanic eruption in Indonesia. Indonesian authorities say they have safely rescued more than 170 climbers stranded by Mount Semeru's sudden eruption. Officials say the group had been camping on the mountain when seismic activity surged and the volcano sent ash and debris down its slopes yesterday. Scientists raised Semeru's alert to the highest level after pyroclastic flows traveled up to 13 kilometers from the crater. Nearly 1,000 residents were evacuated as ash blanketed nearby villages and limited visibility. And China is on track to ban all imports of Japanese seafood, according to 2 government officials in Tokyo. It's the latest in an escalating dispute between the 2 countries. Tensions began when Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te showed his support for Japan today, enjoying a lunch of various cuts of Japan-sourced sushi. Taiwan's government has been subject to similar food bans by China, including Taiwanese pineapples and fish. The U.S. ambassador to Japan, George Glass, voiced his support for Japan, saying on X, the U.S. will, quote, be there for our ally again this time. And the U.S. is greenlighting 2 arms sales to Taiwan in a single week, despite China's warnings. The 2 deals total $1 billion. The latest sale to Taiwan, confirmed Monday, is valued at $700 million and includes advanced missile systems. It comes just days after the first arms sale to Taiwan since President Trump took office. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has that report.
The sales also follow weeks after Trump's trade talks with Chinese leader Xi as the 2 sides continue negotiating a rare earth minerals deal. Beijing has condemned the previous arms sale, saying Taiwan is the first red line that must not be crossed in U.S.-China relations. 5 days after China's protests, the Trump administration approved the second sale. The advanced missile system would strengthen Taiwan's air defense capabilities. Ukraine has deployed the same weapons to defend against Russia's invasion. These weapons are expected to be completed by 2031. So far in the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. has only sold the advanced missile system to Australia and Indonesia. Taiwan is preparing its citizens for a potential Chinese invasion, spending millions of civil defense handbooks to households across the island this week. The de facto U.S. ambassador to Taiwan says America's commitment is rock solid, emphasizing support for Taiwan to achieve peace through strength. The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China and has pledged to take it by force if necessary. Under U.S. law, America is required to sell weapons to Taiwan so it can defend itself.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. The House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party is sounding the alarm, saying China's dominance over rare earth minerals has put the U.S. economy and national security at risk. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
When the Chinese government controls critical minerals, it then has the power to dictate what we say and what we do. This is because if we don't do what they want, they can turn off the flow of critical minerals and cripple our industry.
The House Select Committee on the CCP warning about China's monopoly on rare earth minerals. Rare earths are critical from everything for smartphones to fighter jets. And just over a month ago, Beijing cut off rare earth mineral exports entirely, a move that shocked global markets and forced Washington and its allies into emergency talks. And although the U.S. and China agreed to a one-year trade deal, first off, it's unclear whether that will even hold, as the CCP has broken trade deals with the U.S. before. But if it does hold, lawmakers say the damage is already clear. America is dangerously reliant on the CCP's supply chain.
Once the CCP has killed the competition, they weaponize their monopoly for coercive purposes.
China holds about 90% of the world's rare earth processing, meaning they take raw minerals and turn them into usable products. Beijing got to this point over the last 3 decades by acquiring U.S. companies, flooding markets with subsidized minerals, and driving the remaining mining firms out of business by selling below cost, even willing to lose money to maintain control.
This is no different than the space race. All of the technologies we talked about are in everything in this room. Your blender, your phone, your computer, our defense systems.
Rare earths may be a small upstream industry worth just tens of billions of dollars, but they underpin trillions in downstream economic activity and millions of jobs.
One lawmaker saying factories in her state were impacted by China's export restrictions.
Auto suppliers can't get the magnets required for electric motors. Steel and chemical producers see costs jump overnight. It's the result of a deliberate strategy by the Chinese government to control the supply chains that power the 21st century economy.
The panel recommends rebuilding the domestic supply chain from mining to refining. This year, the Pentagon invested $400 million for a stake in MP Materials, America's only rare earth mine in Mountain Pass, California. And they also warn that unless the U.S. rebuilds now, Beijing will continue using these minerals as geopolitical leverage. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Thank you, Jack. Next, the United States is expanding its AI technology footprint in the Middle East, approving the export of tens of thousands of advanced semiconductor chips. Elon Musk and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang yesterday confirmed the development of a 500-megawatt data center in Saudi Arabia.
So, yeah, we're doing a XAI, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are doing a
500 megawatts, starting with 50 megawatts phase 1, and we're doing it with NVIDIA.
We're also working in Saudi Arabia to build supercomputers to simulate quantum computers, and using our computers to be the controller and the error correction, quantum error correction, requires an enormous amount of computation, and so we're doing a lot of great work there too.
The Department of Commerce says it has authorized exporting the equivalent of 35,000 NVIDIA Blackwell AI chips to companies in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Those chips will go to the state-run G42 in Abu Dhabi and Humane in Saudi Arabia, both companies planning major data center expansions. Humane says it intends to buy hundreds of thousands more AI chips as it builds a 500-megawatt facility alongside Elon Musk's xAI. And in the UAE, G42 is planning one of the world's largest data center hubs built with U.S. and international tech partners. Nuremberg trials researcher urges the public to remember prosecution of high-ranking Nazi officials. Tomorrow marks the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the proceedings. And a Christmas market in Germany is open almost a year after horrific car ramming attack left 6 people dead. Local residents weigh in. Welcome back. A Nuremberg trials researcher is urging people to remember the prosecution of high-ranking Nazi officials after World War II. As the Nuremberg trials approach their 80th anniversary, the research fellow says the lessons learned are just as important today. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
The Nuremberg trials were held in the southern German city between November 20th, 1945 and October 1st, 1946. 22 prominent Nazis were convicted, 12 were sentenced to death. Researcher Axel Fischer emphasizes the need to preserve the memory of these events.
Wenn man im Radio hört, dass man im Oktober Winterreifen aufziehen muss.
You hear that every year, or that you should get a flu jab, but it's similar with these historical events. You have to keep reminding people, and I think in the case of historical events, it's almost more important for survival than with car tires.
Subsequent trials led to the convictions of an additional 177 individuals. Fischer expressed concern that the lessons of the trials may be fading.
Now we can see once again that in many different corners of society, these lessons are being ignored or perhaps no longer taken so seriously, or people are thinking, well, 80 years have passed.
The venue of the original trials now functions as a museum with an exhibition detailing the proceedings.
Die historische Bildungsarbeit, die wir leisten,
The historical political education work that we do is not only aimed at school children and students, but also at members of the police and military, to generate a certain awareness among today's employees, especially against the backdrop of the failure of these institutions under National Socialism.
The Nuremberg trials are regarded as precursors to modern judicial bodies like the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A cheetah at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute at the Front Royal, Virginia campus recently gave birth to 4 cubs. The zoo says the cheetah cubs are strong, active, vocal, and eating well. You can go to the zoo's website to see the adorable 1-month-old babies now on the cheetah cub cam. The zoo says the cheetah mom may move her cubs around her habitat, so they may be out of view at times. This is the 20th litter born at the Front Royal campus. Zookeepers say cheetahs can be challenging to breed, partly because of their sporadic reproductive cycles. They're also considered vulnerable to extinction, with only about 7,000 left in the wild. A new zoo exhibit in New Jersey is allowing visitors to see animals get live medical treatments. Veterinarians hope the new installation educates people on the care that animals receive at the zoo and encourages kids to pursue the profession. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
On a recent morning, spectators watched a female turkey vulture undergo a 30-minute wellness check. Visitors at New Jersey's Turtleback Zoo observed the eye and wing exam, blood being drawn, and a microchip installation. Veterinarian Kaylee Anderson was treating the injured bird.
She's a rescued bird from the wild who came to us for a permanent home since she is non-releasable. So she came in with some trauma. She can't fly.
Few zoos offer a glimpse into veterinary care. Some see displays of the process as a form of transparency.
More zoos are starting to do it as hospitals are being redone because of the value of the education aspect and alerting people to exactly what happens at zoos and the kind of care we can provide.
Anderson says children seem to enjoy the installation the most, and she enjoys that the exhibit is encouraging kids to become vets.
So it's really fun to be able to see the kids realize that it's something that exists and it's like a really awesome job.
The exhibit could inspire the next generation of veterinarians. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
This year, it might be more cost-effective to get a real Christmas tree. 83% of households plan to put up an artificial tree, but nearly 90% of artificial trees come from China, and tariffs are driving prices up 10 to 20%. Real trees are a different story. 84% of growers say they're keeping wholesale prices steady, and some are lowering them. That's according to a Real Christmas Tree Board survey. Growers reportedly say supply is strong nationwide. So this season, the classic real tree may offer the rare gift of a better deal. Meanwhile, the Christmas market in the German city of Magdeburg is open almost a year after a horrific car ramming attack that left 6 people dead. This morning, more than 140 stall holders opened their booths, offering festive items and holiday treats. Here's what some local residents had to say.
As I saw, they've put up quite a few bollards or barriers and such to prevent that from happening again. However, I think you always have that in the back of your mind.
Of course, you shouldn't lose your sense of fun in life, but you also shouldn't forget what happened, so to speak. That's for sure. Definitely.
Why should you let that get you down? There's no need. And besides, it's sufficiently secure here. Nothing can really happen anymore.
5 women and a boy died in last year's attack. Many more were wounded. Earlier this month, the suspect in the attack went on trial. The 51-year-old has been charged with 6 counts of murder and 330 of attempted murder. He could face a life sentence if convicted. That's all we have time for this hour, but if you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at news.today@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay with us. We'll be broadcasting the White House press briefing right after this break.